Greetings, sacred souls. My name is Natasha Nata. I go by Nata, and I am here to share, probably for the first time online, my full awakening story, my spiritual awakening, i.e., my Kundalini awakening. Mine was actually leading up and then ended up being more of a spontaneous awakening. So I wanted to share a little bit about that because I feel like it's such an important topic that is oftentimes misunderstood. There's a lot of misinformation and a lot of misinterpretations can lead us to a path that is more destructive for our bodies, i.e. getting on pharmaceuticals when we're not understanding of what is going on within and what is being cleared through. So I'd like to share with you. So about 15 or 16 years ago, I began, on the awakened path. Let's say I felt like I was always super in tune. At the age of 11, I'll just back it up. At the age of 11, I had my first near-death experience where I was run over by a car, and that moment where you literally go up to the gates and see yourself below and meet that light is very true. I was very young. I really didn't understand what was going on, nor what would happen afterwards. It was just it was a very big miracle that happened. I should have probably been dead. I remember in that moment, as I take a deep breath, I remember in that moment with the pressure of the car on my back and that moment of like, God, can you please help me? And it was really because I really could feel for my parents, and I could see a really kind of sad timeline that I didn't really want for them. It was really interesting because it all happened so quickly and so spontaneously. Kind of similar to, sitting with ayahuasca, for instance. It just like all these fractal experiences amplifying. And so in that moment, God saved me. And I know it was God because I asked God to save me. And I know my grandmother was there because my grandmother had died a few weeks before. And it was just like, I could feel her divine presence there. And I literally, once the car got off my back, I literally jumped up as if nothing happened. People were shocked, like even going to the hospital, like it was just insane, like it just test after test. And so that was a really interesting experience. The downflow of information started to happen then. I had these, which I thought was just normal. I thought that everybody experiences this. So these insights, the aura, the colors, the energies, I was able to tap into these very quickly. I would receive messages from guides, which I didn't even know. I just thought it was normal and like God was telling me. And so I would receive all these intuitive insights and just like wild stuff. And I was deeply questioned a lot. I was questioned and asked, like, how do you know that? That was like a common question that I would always get. And that, kind of started to create this uncertainty. And, I was told, like, you're showing off and you're too much and da-da-da-da. And so all of these projections would kind of stunt my spiritual growth. And I believe that everything does happen for a reason. It's all divine. And these insights were so deep and so profound, but I felt like I wasn't heard. And so probably about 13, I was like smoking and started drinking really young. And I was really actually realizing now and reflecting in my 40s, I'm 40 years old now, that I was just trying to suppress, all the insights and stuff that was coming up for me. And that idea of not being believed or heard, it was just really, it was hard, it was difficult for an 11-year-old. And even now, at 40, when I get insights, I'm like, hello. But that aside, we learned how to work with that, right? And so in my late teens, like 19, I was probably 19, had some pretty serious addiction problems with alcohol and partying and that whole kind of gimmick that we've been sold as life, and how to celebrate and how we feel good and how when we don't feel good, we're always like reaching for substances. And so all of these things kind of started my path. In my 20s, I went pretty hardcore into experimenting with like lots of partying and some drugs. And I always felt like I was almost like a light of savior in the groups that I was in. Like I was always hoping that they would shift and And if they didn't, then I had to. And then I had another awakening experience where I got into a car accident. I was passenger. 2 car accidents in 1 week, another spiritual awakening. Because I had asked God, I'm like, if this is not my path, if these aren't my people, can you please show me the path? And that like spun me out on the highway. We smashed into a wall, airbags deployed. Like I was out for a second and back. And then again, Christ did. I felt like this energy, and a dear being in my life had passed away months before, and I could feel his presence there. And I was so grateful to him and to this earth, and then I bowed to the earth and promised myself from this day I would change again. And I did. And that was the pivotal point in my life that I made that change. And shortly after, quit smoking, quit drinking, honoring the path of the awakening. And fast forward years later, I got more into yoga, more into opening, healing. I visited Peru, which was a very big activation. And not even for medicine ceremonies, just being on the lands was such a remembrance. And interesting, this hat's from Peru that I got 10 years later, as a remembrance. And like I could start remembering lifetimes in certain places where I was, and that felt really wild, but really like, oh yeah, like so familiar, and like I know this. So that really started me on this path of awakening. And I wasn't really familiar with Shakti, the energy of Shakti, and what that was. Like I was this curious spiritual adventure, and that was like opening, and like meeting teachers along the way that would open more pathways, and like healing trauma. And then when I sat with Madre Ayahuasca in 2 ceremonies, probably about 6 years ago now, I had what they would call the Spontaneous Kundalini Awakening. And I had no idea what this meant or what would come after. And so this would ignite, a very deeply transformational journey. The moment itself, which I'll probably talk about in a different video, but the moment itself of that spontaneous awakening, you can't actually put into words. There's no words for that. It did feel like bliss and ecstasy, probably for a few hours actually, and even after ceremony, that feeling of unconditional love, being seen and held, was quite profound actually. It was something that I'll never forget. And it just reminds you to pause and just to like be in the sacredness of this life, and that it truly is a ceremony, and we will get through it. And so the dark night of the soul times Godzillion kicked in after that, after I was shown deeper awarenesses, deeper connections, downflow of information, even more than when I was a child, insights and codes and all these multi-dimensional experiences that I couldn't really put into words. There was a lot of fear. I had to heal a lot of fear, a lot of ancestral trauma, a lot of ancestral programming, projections, wounds that we've carried for generations and generations. So that was deep. It was a deeply profound, probably 6 years of being in that really deeply. A lot of inner work, a lot of time alone, a lot of time in the shadows, deep shadow work. I didn't really feel supported after my awakening. I didn't really have the tools, but I know that was my initiation so that I can lead on this path, especially with psychedelic integration. And when we're using such powerful medicines, powerful medicines that we are using, we do owe, this deep bow to these medicines at this time, and a responsibility when we work with these medicines. And so my path has always been very unique and very much for me. I'm not one of those who could just fit in anywhere. Just really receiving all these insights and downloads was something I really had to like adapt to. And the teachings grow and we grow, and the teachers show up, and then we become the teacher, and then we walk this path, and we honor what is. Now, could I have been more prepared for my spontaneous awakening? 100%. Did I really know? No. But my soul knew. And some of us, being very fiery in my birth chart, lots of fire, lots of fixed sign placements. There was parts of my soul that actually wanted that expedited kind of version. So it's also being mindful of what we're calling in and being prepared for, any type of journey or ceremony that we're a ritual that we're taking part in, that we're aware. And then we're aware of with these openings comes growth, and with this growth comes responsibility, and with this strength also comes a deeper sense of knowing and responsibility that we carry. So this path, I could say, and this spontaneous awakening, near-death experience, working with psychedelics now and working as a sacred space holder, a mentor on this path, we don't need to rush, we don't need to rush. And the floodgates will open and insights and stuff will come through, and we can learn tools to ground ourselves. We can learn tools how to embody, like to be in our bodies. Because as beautiful and multidimensional that we are, we're also here to be in this body, to have this human experience at this time. So I would say that, practicing and embodying these tools is what's going to get us through these times. And as we're continuously, as a sister always said, she's like, we are continuously bowing at the altar of impermanence, just as nature is continuously changing and going through cycles, as are we. And this deep remembrance that we're being open to, it takes time and space to integrate. Integration is the most expansive tool that we can learn to use, is to create spaces to integrate, not just for like a day or an hour, but like integration. I integrated those ceremonies for 6 years, probably still integrating, as I do still get flashes and, still move through some trauma and fear of my own. I'm human, very human. However, along the path, we can honor that we're going to get through it. We're going to get through it. And even when Shakti starts to work through you and that innate power, she has potent sisters and brothers working with that energy. That is the ultimate spiritual adventure journey for sure. And so I will never say that I know everything or nothing. I really don't. I just know that my experience has been intensely beautiful. And with that intensity comes more beauty. And as we learn to navigate the realms in this multidimensional space that we are in, and learn to expand beyond our knowing, take up space, take up space in an infinite galaxy of space. That's why we are here. That's why God put us here, to remember and to remind others of our beauty and our intensity and our potency and our power. But with that comes sacred responsibility, reciprocity, and honor of this earth. Because we are nothing without this vessel, nor we are anything without this earth, that we are here, here not just to be drinking our lives away and drowning in things that we don't need. And I know that I would say that this path needs a lot of self-compassion, a lot of forgiveness, a lot of mindfulness, because it doesn't stop. We just continue to grow and to expand and to heal and to let go and to detach, fully detach. And with that, always we're reminded to pause and to breathe and to expand. And, even when those moments of like deep anxieties or fears, those waves that just come through, like most of them aren't even ours, right? We're in a collective pool of consciousness. And so just to observe that as it comes through and not attach to it as if it's mine, stories, So the spiritual awakening, the Kundalini awakening process has taught me that, to pause, to self-reflect, to see where I'm holding, to see where there's tension in the body, because that tension in the body is a whisper. There's a whisper of, some sort of repression, unprocessed trauma, emotions, something that's buried so deeply within us. And it's time to let it go, to set yourself free, to live a life where you feel alive, liberated, thriving, joyful, anchored. And it takes a lot of courage, this path, the medicine path, the medicine woman's path, and the healer's path. And it's when you know that you're supported, the unseen has you held. Call them in, call in prayer, offerings, all of the teachings that we've been taught. There are tools now tools that we used for many, many lifetimes, gatherings and sitting in circle and prayer and amplifying. To be thankful that we have this moment to be in this body, in this vessel, for this human experience. And observe from detachment, witnessing what is going on, and knowing that ultimately we can rise, we can shed, we can have compassion. And so as it unfolds, I will share more of my spiritual awakening and the insights and tools that I've learned over the last 15 years and beyond, and in ways that we can nourish ourselves and create safety within our bodies, because that's what our bodies need to heal, is to feel safe. And it's up to us to create that safety. That's no one else's responsibility to save us. No one's, not your parents, not your partners, not your kids, not your neighbors. No one. It's yours. It's truly yours. And so just know that you're supported on this path. And I know that the Kundalini awakening is not easy. It's not easy. And that's why I almost chuckle when I see people like, I'm going for an active Kundalini awakening. I'm like, whoa, dude, do you know what you're getting into? And we are in no rush to be awakening an innate intelligence that lives within us, and we are not God, you know. Yes, some of us will take an expedited journey, and that does not mean that every psychedelic experience will invoke a spiritual awakening. It does not. It really doesn't. There's layers to this work, and initiations likely that you've been, you know, facing since you were born and birthed into this realm. And so I would just really process on working on the shadow work, you know, work with the day-to-day stuff, the day-to-day triggers, the childhood, inner child work. These are all beautiful and powerful tools to ignite any spiritual awakening. We don't have to go and try. It will happen when it's intended to happen. And if you are working with plant medicines and psychedelics, I encourage you to work with a mentor. I encourage you to work with someone who will prepare you for the ceremony and after the ceremony. Integration and preparation are very, very powerful tools on this path. Very, very powerful. As these medicines carry great power, it's a whole new level of consciousness that you're introducing into your space. And so honor that. Honor the insights that you get from it. You don't need to be going and drinking ayahuasca every weekend. Integrate the first ceremony, those teachings, embody that. And then when you feel like you've embodied that in those teachings and unlayered and done the forgiveness and ho'oponopono and, you know, heal the relationships around you, heal the relationship with yourself, then by all means, open up the next chapter. But if we're continuously just bypassing because we're running from our truth and ourselves, you know, and these medicines can teach you, can be deep teachers, and that's why the preparation to sit with these medicines is important, so that when that whatever comes to face you, that anaconda or whatever it's facing you, that you can face it, that you're not running and hiding like you did in this realm of work, yeah, that we can face it, and we can honor that there is something so deeply hidden within myself that's keeping me stagnant and stuck in pain and dis-ease in my body and destroying all my relationships and toxicity that's around me. But you have to face you. And it's not about, you know, shunning yourself or low-vibing yourself with shame, guilt, and judgment and all the stuff we've already trying to get away from. It's about finding that self-compassion and that forgiveness for self and others who have wronged you or who you have wronged. You know, these teachings come if you're open to the wisdom. And so I honor you for taking the time to listen, to honor this call. Whatever is calling you, honor that and prepare for it and integrate it. You know, there's so much we can do, and it's not a rush. I just want to urge you to know that it's not a rush. We are here. It's a human experience. Yes, it's a short time, but we can create the peace, joy, and harmony that we truly desire. That's the whole heaven on earth. If you can feel like heaven on earth in your body, you can feel like heaven on earth anywhere you are. And that sends a ripple, and that sends a message. And then you become magnetic. And wherever you are magnetizing that energy of divine love. But if you are bypassing and living in the shadow and projecting that shadow, and not facing yourself and not utilizing the tools and going back into those old timelines, going back into addiction and patterns and toxicity, you're choosing your path. That's what Madre taught me, is you choose. You choose. You choose your vibration. You choose where you spend your time. You choose how much you overthink. You choose what you eat. You choose what you drink. No one's here to save you. Just you. That's it. Just you. And so I leave you with that. I leave you with the loving grace that it's all going to work out. And if you are in the middle of your, or in the beginning of your Kundalini awakening or spiritual awakening, whatever you're navigating, just know that it will come with more ease as we utilize the tools and building a strong foundation. You're not alone. Support is here. I'm happy to support you on your path of awakening, both professionally or personally. It's all intertwined. There is no separation, much like the organ systems in our body. We're all intertwined. And if you have dis-ease in your body, that's an indication that you have some deeper work to do. You have some deeper work to do, and not to be feared. We're not here to fear the work. We're here to honor it. And sometimes that work is so simple and so beautiful. However, it teaches us to slow down, just to honor those moments. Slow down. Will you allow yourself that space as we dance with humility, bowing at the altar of impermanence, that there is so much humility that we go through in a human experience. The more that we can detach from the stories and the binding of the wounds and the projections and repeating and telling the same story over and over and over again. Reminding yourself, I'm not a victim to this life. I am not a victim to this life. So, sacred souls, brothers and sisters, I honor you for walking this divine path. Know that you're supported. Reach out if you need support. There's information and links below. And be blessed. Be blessed.